On a freezing October night in Aurora, Colorado, while mountain winds howled through the empty streets, a young man working the night shift at a small roadside gas station accidentally stepped into a turning point in his life. He helped a stranger, a woman in desperate need, who didn't have enough money for gas to get home with her young child sleeping soundly in the back seat. That act of kindness lasted only a few minutes, but it did not escape the eyes of his ruthless manager. Without listening to a single explanation, the man fired him on the spot, despite the fact that he had done absolutely nothing wrong. After years of giving everything he had, working overtime, swapping shifts, sacrificing countless things just to keep the job, he found himself walking home in silence, unemployed, filled with regret and tightness in his chest. Yet, deep down, still knowing he had done the right thing. What he didn't expect was, fate was preparing a gift he had never dared to dream of. Because the next morning, a sleek black Rolls-Royce Phantom suddenly stopped in front of his worn-down house, carrying an opportunity unlike any other, one powerful enough to change the lives of both him and his young child. If you enjoy stories like this, stories about life, about people, about kindness being repaid, hit follow so you won't miss the tales we share every day. But the real question is, who exactly was the woman from last night? And why did a Rolls-Royce show up at his doorstep the very next morning? Matthew Clark once believed in one very simple thing. If he worked hard, life would eventually get better. At 28, he stood behind the counter of the Rocky Mountain gas station, a small stop right off the I-70 highway, working tirelessly every night to raise his little daughter and pay off the massive debts he had never even created. Unlike his peers who were still enjoying their carefree youth, Matthew moved from shift to shift, working while also being a father, taking care of Ella, his 6-year-old daughter with curly brown hair and a smile sweet as the morning sun. Matthew had dreams, though not grand ones. He just wished that one day he wouldn't have to count every last dollar, or worry whether he would have enough money to buy milk for his daughter that week. But for now, he accepted the quiet rhythm of his night shifts. He knew every regular customer, the truck drivers who needed coffee made just the way they liked it, the nurses stopping by before a long night shift, the factory workers grabbing a quick snack before heading onto the production line. He learned kindness from his mother, a woman who worked 2 jobs just to keep a roof over their heads. And then, everything changed when he met Rebecca. 7 years earlier, Matthew, then only 21, was full of hope for the future. He met Rebecca at a local bar. She was beautiful, energetic, and loved talking about big dreams. They fell in love quickly, marrying just 6 months later. A year after that, Ella was born, the baby with big round blue eyes that melted Matthew's heart every time he looked at her. In the beginning, life was still okay. Rebecca worked part-time and Matthew worked full-time at the gas station. They weren't wealthy, but they had each other. Then everything began to fall apart. Matthew slowly noticed the changes, Rebecca coming home later, guarding her phone closely, and, most importantly, money disappearing without a trace. At first, it was only $50, $100. He assumed she bought things for herself or for Ella. But then the amounts became $500, $1,000. The credit cards were maxed out. Calls from debt collectors came endlessly. One night, Matthew followed her, and his heart shattered when he saw Rebecca walk into a casino on the outskirts of town. He sat in the car, watching neon lights flicker across his face, feeling as if his entire world was collapsing. When confronted, Rebecca didn't deny it. She cried, promised to change. And Matthew believed her. He always believed her, but promises broke even faster than they were spoken. In the next 3 years, Rebecca sank deeper into gambling. She borrowed money from dangerous people. She pawned Matthew's mother's bracelet, the only thing of hers he still had. Every dollar Matthew worked so hard to earn vanished into the bottomless pit called "Just One Last Time, Baby," I promise." Ella was only 4 at the time. She began asking, "Daddy, why isn't Mommy home?" Matthew froze. How could he tell the truth to a child who only knew how to draw flowers and sleep with her teddy bear? Until the fateful night 2 years ago. Matthew came home after a night shift, his body so exhausted that his hands trembled as he held the keys. But when he opened the door, he froze. The apartment was empty. Not the kind of empty when someone steps out for a moment, but empty as if a storm had swept through. Rebecca's closet was stripped bare. Jewelry, shoes, everything gone. On the kitchen table lay a simple note. "Matthew, I'm sorry. I can't keep going. The debt is too big. They will find me. I don't want to drag you and Ella into this. Please forgive me. Rebecca." Matthew's hands shook. He collapsed to the floor, clutching the note, and, for the first time since his mother died, he cried. Not because he lost Rebecca, but because from that moment on, he alone had to face $77,000 in debt. Credit card debt, bank loans, and debts owed to organizations he had never even heard of. And Ella, the little girl sleeping peacefully in the next room, unaware that her life had just taken a turn that would change it forever. 2 years passed. Matthew had grown used to being a single father. He worked 60 to 70 hours a week to raise his daughter and pay his debts. Each month, he paid $1,200 toward the loans, $800 for rent, and the rest went to food, utilities, and Ella's school expenses. Numbers piling up like a mountain that never seemed to shrink. Fortunately, Mrs. Keaton, the 65-year-old neighbor, was an angel to Matthew and his daughter. She watched Ella whenever he worked the night shift, sometimes bringing over a pot of soup or a tray of lasagna with her usual line, "I made too much, Matthew. Don't let it go to waste." Matthew knew she never made too much, but he also knew he was in no position to refuse anyone's kindness. He once had dreams, going to college, studying engineering, or business. But now, his only dream was for Ella to grow up in a stable home where she wouldn't have to worry the way he once did. His co-workers at the gas station knew his story. They respected him because he never complained, never arrived late, never refused a hard shift. But lately, everything had grown suffocating. The Rocky Mountain gas station had just been bought out by Falcon Energy, a corporation that cared only about profit. Darren Cole, the new regional manager, immediately installed cameras everywhere, monitored employees 24/7, and enforced heartless rules. No giveaways, no helping customers, no exceptions. This is business, not charity. Matthew hated those rules, but he needed the job, so he kept his head down and tried to live within the lines. Until that fateful night. It was a cold October night, the kind of cold that seeped through jackets and sank straight into the bone. The gas station was quiet, with only the occasional car wobbling in. Matthew was rearranging the shelves when an old Honda Accord crept into the parking lot, its headlights dim and its engine wheezing as if one more sneeze would shut it down for good. Something made him pause. The woman behind the wheel looked exhausted, so drained that even the harsh gas station lights couldn't hide the fatigue in her eyes. Her hands tightened around the steering wheel before she stepped out. Matthew noticed her clothes. They had once been expensive, but now looked wrinkled and out of place against the beat-up car. But what caught in Matthew's throat was the child sleeping in the back seat, curled under a blanket far too thin for the biting Colorado cold. The woman walked in, hesitant, clutching her purse as if it were the last thing she owned. Matthew offered a polite smile. "Good evening, ma'am. How can I help you?" She hesitated for a long moment before speaking, her voice quiet, as if afraid someone might hear. "I need to get to Denver, but I only have $15. How much gas? Does that buy me?" Matthew did the math instantly. $15 wouldn't even get her halfway. He glanced at the child again, something tightening in his chest. "How much do you need?" he asked gently. The woman swallowed, shame burning in her eyes. $30 will get me home. She let out a shaky breath. I tried 3 other gas stations. No one would help. In that moment, Matthew stood on a dangerous line. He knew Darren Cole was watching through the cameras. He knew the policy. He knew the consequences. But then he looked at the sleeping child. And he remembered Ella. He remembered the nights Rebecca disappeared, leaving him and their daughter without enough money for food. He remembered the desperation of counting coins, praying they were enough for gas to get to work. He remembered Mrs. Keaton, the woman who quietly left grocery bags at his door without ever asking for thanks. Matthew's fingers trembled as he opened his wallet. He pulled out the only $20 bill he had left, the money he'd saved to buy Ella fever medicine that weekend. Don't worry, he said softly but firmly. I'll cover the rest. The woman's eyes widened in disbelief. I can't let you do that. It's only $15, Matthew reassured her with a small smile. When you can, pass it on to someone else. For a moment, she stood completely still, as if the weight of the world had just slipped off her shoulders. Then her eyes filled with grateful tears. Thank you, she whispered, her voice breaking. Matthew simply nodded and walked outside to pump the gas himself. As he worked, he stole another glance at the sleeping child, the tiny chest rising and falling gently, blissfully unaware of the chaos the adults were enduring. No child should have to carry burdens like these, he thought. And he had no idea that in just a few minutes his entire world would flip upside down. When Matthew finished filling the tank, he saw the woman adjusting the blanket around her child, her fingers trembling as she murmured another thank you. Matthew smiled and waved, watching the old Honda disappear into the night. He exhaled, feeling a strange warmth spread through his chest, even as the cold bit at his skin. It wasn't much, just $15, but it was enough to get that mother and child home safely, and to him, that had always been what mattered most. But the peaceful moment didn't last. The moment he walked back inside, Matthew saw Darren Cole standing in the doorway. The man's arms were crossed, his dark eyes burning with fury. He had clearly watched everything. Matthew's stomach tightened as he walked past. Maybe, just maybe, Cole wouldn't make a big deal out of it. Office, now. Cole's voice sliced through the air, cold as steel. Matthew felt the words hit his chest like a stone. He forced himself to stay calm, his mother's voice echoing in his mind. No matter what happens, you stand tall. He followed Cole into the office, heart pounding as the door slammed shut behind him. Cole didn't sit. He didn't need to. He paced like a predator, fists clenched. You think I'm blind, Clark? Cole hissed. You think I didn't see what you just did? Matthew stood tall. She had a child in the car. She was just trying to get home. Cole let out a mocking laugh. And that's your problem because... He jabbed a finger toward the security monitor, rewound to the exact moment Matthew handed over the money. There. See it with your own eyes? You stole company property. You stole Falcon Energy's gas. Matthew's jaw tightened. That was my money. I don't care whose money it was. Cole slammed his hand onto the desk. You set a precedent. What if everyone starts doing that? What if every sob story that walks in here expects freebies? Not every story is a scam, Matthew replied, eyes unwavering. Cole's expression darkened, his lips twisting into a cruel smile. You don't get to decide that. I do. And guess what? He spat out each word. You are fired. The words hit Matthew like a punch, but he refused to break. He wouldn't let Cole see him falter. He removed his name tag and set it on the desk. I understand, Cole scoffed. Oh, don't act noble. You broke the rules, and you pay the price. Grab your stuff and get out. Matthew didn't argue. He didn't beg. He didn't bow to a man who saw people only as numbers. He walked out, past the glossy, soulless shelves, past the familiar faces of customers who knew him by name. And as he reached the door, a strange clarity settled over him. Losing this job would make things harder, no question. Rent. Bills. The massive debt is waiting for him. He would have to find another way. But if the choice was between keeping his job and keeping his kindness, then he had chosen correctly. Outside, the cold bit into his skin as he zipped his jacket and started the long walk home. The bright gas station sign faded behind him. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring. And he certainly didn't know that in just one day, a Rolls-Royce Phantom would pull up in front of his house, carrying something that could change everything. Matthew sat on the old, worn-out sofa, eyes fixed on the pile of envelopes scattered across the heavily patched coffee table. The apartment was silent except for the faint hum of traffic outside and the steady breathing of Ella sleeping in the room next door. The reality of tonight was still sinking in, layer by layer. Fired. Just like that. 3 years of dedication, countless shift swaps, countless nights treating customers like human beings instead of numbers. Wiped out because he chose to help someone in desperation. He sighed and rubbed his temples. The numbers appeared in his mind. Sharp and cold. Rent, $800, due in 12 days. Monthly debt payment, $1,200, already 3 days overdue. Utilities, $143, will be cut off in 5 days, if unpaid. Food for Ella, about $300 month, if extremely frugal. Fever medicine for Ella, $28, needed by the weekend. Total money in the account, $247. He calculated quickly. Enough for 2 weeks at best, if he tightened every last expense. But amid the uncertainty gnawing at the edges of his mind, Matthew still felt no regret. He heard his mother's voice in memory. There is never a wrong time to do the right thing, Matthew. He picked up his phone. 3 missed calls from Mrs. Keaton. 1 text. Matthew, you're home later than usual. Ella is sleeping soundly at my place. Is something wrong? His thumb hovered over the screen. What was he supposed to say? That he had just lost the only job he had? Those 3 years of hard work had evaporated because of $15? That he had no idea how he would pay the rent? He couldn't send those words. Not yet. Instead, he typed, Auntie Keaton, I'm sorry for being late. Something happened at the station. I'll come get Ella right away. Thank you so much. He hit send, then set the phone down as though it weighed a ton. 10 minutes later, he arrived at Mrs. Keaton's home. Matthew walked softly down the hallway and knocked gently. Mrs. Keaton opened the door, her kind eyes lingering on his face long enough to see the things he was trying to hide. You look exhausted, she whispered, careful not to wake Ella. I'm fine, Auntie. Matthew forced a smile. Just a long shift. Mrs. Keaton didn't believe him, but she was someone who respected silence. She simply stepped aside. Ella's sleeping on the sofa. Let me get a blanket so you can carry her home. Matthew stepped inside and saw Ella curled under an old patchwork quilt, hugging her teddy bear. She slept so peacefully. It made his heart ache. What was he going to tell his daughter? Mrs. Keaton returned with a plastic bag. I've got some leftovers, lasagna and a few cookies. Auntie Keaton, you don't have to… Matthew, her voice was gentle but firm. Take it. I cooked too much. Matthew knew she hadn't cooked too much, but he also knew refusing kindness right now was almost impossible. He took the bag of food, feeling both the weight of it and the weight of the love behind it. Thank you, he whispered. She placed a hand on his arm. Anytime, dear. It was 11 p.m. by the time he got home. Matthew lay Ella in her bed, pulled the blanket up to her chin. He sat beside her, watching her small chest rise and fall in sleep. 6 years old. She was only 6, and she had already endured too much. A mother swallowed by gambling and then disappearing, A father, constantly exhausted, constantly worried. Ella deserved a better life. He leaned down and kissed her forehead. "I promise," he whispered. "I'll find a way. I'll never let you go without anything." Matthew returned to the living room, staring at the pile of envelopes again. He opened his old laptop and started job searching. Retail assistant, $12 hour, requires weekend shifts. Impossible, he had to be home with Ella. Warehouse worker, $14 hour, night shifts. Who would watch Ella? Delivery driver, $13 hour, requires a reliable personal vehicle. His car struggled more than he did. It seemed every job demanded something he didn't have. Flexible hours, a reliable car, or no family responsibilities. He closed the laptop and covered his face with his hands. How did people get through things like this? How did other single parents survive? Then he remembered. Many didn't. They drowned in debt. They lost their homes. They lost their children. The thought terrified him to the core. Matthew didn't sleep at all that night. He lay in bed, staring at the dim ceiling while his mind ran endlessly. The worst part wasn't losing the job. It was the suffocating sense of failure. He had failed Rebecca, unable to pull her out of gambling. He had failed his mother. She died before she could see him become something more than a gas station employee. And now he feared he was failing Ella. "But you did the right thing," a small voice whispered. "You helped a mother get home safely." But was that enough? He didn't know. The next morning arrived with that same pale, cold light seeping through the small apartment window. Matthew woke from a restless sleep, his whole body aching as if he'd spent the night fighting, despite the fact that the real battle had taken place only in his mind. Ella was already awake, sitting at the kitchen table with a bowl of cereal, her legs swinging beneath the chair. When she saw her father walk out, she looked up. "Good morning, Dad. Auntie Keaton gave me cookies. Can I have one?" Matthew forced the most natural smile he could manage. "Of course, sweetheart, but finish your cereal first." Ella nodded enthusiastically and went back to her spoonfuls. Matthew poured himself a cup of cheap instant coffee and sat across from her. "I have the day off today," he said. Ella looked up, eyes lighting up. "Really? Then, can you take me to the park?" Matthew's chest tightened. When was the last time he took her to the park? When was the last time he had a whole day just for her? "Let's see," he answered, dodging gently. "I have a few things to take care of first." Ella nodded, but a flicker of disappointment crossed her tiny face. That momentary expression cut straight through him like a blade. After dropping Ella off at Mrs. Keaton's, with a promise to pick her up at noon, Matthew returned to the apartment and began job searching in earnest. He opened his laptop and started firing off applications like a machine. Target, sales associate; Walmart, warehouse staff; King Soopers, cashier; McDonald's, night shift crew. Every application submitted felt like a confession of failure, but he had no other choice. The phone rang. An unknown number. "Hello? Is this Matthew Clark?" The voice on the other end was cold and emotionless. "Yes, speaking." "This is Consolidated Debt Services. We're calling about your past due payment of $1,200. If we don't receive payment within 48 hours, your file will be transferred to collections." Matthew's stomach twisted. "I understand. I'll have the money by the end of this week." "We hear that often, Mr. Clark. 48 hours. The line went dead. Matthew set the phone down, braced his elbows on the table, and covered his face with his hands. How? How was he supposed to come up with $1,200 in 48 hours when he didn't even have a job yet? A knock sounded at the door. Matthew was sitting on the floor, surrounded by printed job applications, trying to map out a schedule for 2 part-time jobs while still being able to care for Ella. The knock came again, steady, clear. He stood, wiped his face, and went to the door. Looking through the peephole, he saw a young woman standing outside. Not a stranger. The woman from last night. But she looked completely different. Her posture was straight, confident. Her outfit was elegant, a navy wool coat perfectly tailored. Her hair was neatly brushed. And behind her, gleaming in the afternoon sun, was a Rolls-Royce Phantom. Matthew blinked. Was he dreaming? He opened the door. "Mr. Clark?" Her voice was soft but steady. "Yes?" She smiled. "I'm Madeline Hartman. We met last night, at the gas station." Matthew nodded slowly, still not fully processing. "I remember. Are you okay? And the little one?" "We're both fine, thanks to you," Madeline said. "I'm here to thank you. And," she hesitated slightly, "to introduce you to my father." She stepped aside. A tall man emerged from the Rolls-Royce, somewhere in his 50s, wearing a perfectly cut three-piece suit, exuding a quiet authority. Matthew's stomach tightened again. "Richard Hartman," the man said, his voice deep and commanding but not harsh. He extended a hand. Matthew shook it, his mind scrambling to connect the dots. "Richard Hartman, as in Hartman Energy Enterprises?" "That's right." Matthew felt as if the floor beneath him had started to tremble. Hartman Energy was one of the largest energy corporations in the West, owning hundreds of gas stations, refineries, and pipelines across the state. And now the man was standing at his door. "Please, come in," Matthew stammered, stepping aside quickly. The contrast was almost comical. A billionaire and his daughter were standing in an apartment so small it was probably smaller than their dressing room, surrounded by a worn-out sofa, a second-hand coffee table, and a faded rug. Matthew wasn't ashamed, but he felt the collision of two worlds pressing in on the room. Richard didn't seem bothered. He sat comfortably on the sofa, while Madeline stood nearby, her expression softening. "You're probably wondering why we're here," Richard began. I have no idea," Matthew replied, standing near the doorway, arms instinctively crossed. Madeline stepped forward slightly. "I wanted to thank you," she said, her voice gentler than her father's. "Not just for the gas, but because you didn't treat me like I was invisible. You helped me when no one else would." Matthew shrugged lightly. "It was just $15. "It was more than that." Madeline smiled faintly. She glanced at her father, then back at Matthew. "You didn't know who I was. You had nothing to gain, but you still helped. That doesn't happen often anymore." Matthew frowned, still unable to piece it all together. "I'm glad you got home safely. But what's the real reason you came here?" Richard leaned back, arms crossing. "I'm the owner of Hartman Energy Enterprises, a multi-billion-dollar corporation with subsidiaries in multiple fields. One of those is a gas station chain." "Rocky Mountain," Matthew realized instantly. Richard nodded. "Among several others. I've been in the process of acquiring Falcon Energy. Last night, I finalized the call. As of midnight, I own every gas station in this state." Matthew froze. "You? What?" Richard tilted his head. Eyes sharp, but not without empathy. "I reviewed the security footage. I saw how Darren Cole treated you. Saw him fire you for a simple act of kindness." Matthew's face burned. He hated the idea of a stranger, especially someone like this, witnessing that humiliating moment. "So what?" he asked slowly. "You're here to offer me my job back?" Richard studied him. "Not exactly." Madeline stepped forward with a small smile. "He wants to offer you Darren Cole's job." Matthew blinked. "What?" Richard's voice was steady, unwavering. "I need someone who understands people. Someone who can run that station with both efficiency and humanity in mind. You've worked there for years. You know the customers, the staff. You know what works and what doesn't." Matthew stared, his brain struggling to keep up. "You're offering me a manager position?" "Regional manager," Richard corrected. "Full-time, salary, benefits, and health insurance. Everything Cole had, except you actually deserve it. Matthew felt the room tilt. Was this real? A job offer? From a billionaire? Hours after he was fired? Why me? He asked, his voice hoarse. Madeline's eyes softened again. Because when no one was watching, when you had everything to lose, you still chose to do the right thing. For the first time since last night, Matthew felt the hardened shell around him crack. The weight of the previous night, stress, fear, uncertainty, pressed down all at once. He looked at his worn-out sneakers, the chipped coffee table, and the scattered job applications across the floor. And finally, he nodded. I'll take it. Morning came with the clear autumn sunlight streaming through the small apartment window as Matthew stepped outside, his hand tightly holding Ella's. She was wearing her favorite dress, a blue one with floral patterns, and a small, cute backpack on her shoulders. "Daddy, why are you dressed so nice today?" Ella asked, looking up at him with curious eyes. Matthew smiled, glancing down at the suit Richard Hartman had sent over the night before. Tailored to his measurements, fitting so perfectly in a way he'd never thought clothes could fit. "Because today is a special day, Princess." "What's special about it?" He dropped to one knee so his face was level with hers. "I've got a new job, a better one, and I promise, from now on, things will slowly start getting better." Ella threw her arms around him, her small face pressing into his shoulder. "I love you, Daddy." "I love you too, my girl. Now let's go. I'll take you to school and then head to work." When Matthew parked the old Honda Civic next to the customers' cars, he noticed a group of people gathered near the entrance. Employees, regulars, a mix of familiar and unfamiliar faces, all murmuring among themselves. The Falcon Energy sign had been taken down, replaced with the sleek modern logo of Hartman gas stations, the silver lettering gleaming in the morning sun. It looked completely different. Better. More professional. Matthew took a deep breath. Everything would be fine. He had worked here for 3 years. These people knew him. They used to trust him. But the moment he walked through the glass doors, he could feel a change in the air. Every gaze turned toward him. Some were curious, some suspicious, and some angry. Devon, the 25-year-old cashier who had worked with Matthew for nearly 2 years, stood behind the counter. Arms folded. He wasn't smiling. "Unbelievable," Devon muttered, loud enough for the whole room to hear. "Last night, you were one of us. Now you're— What the hell are you?" Matthew stopped, turning fully to face him. The tension in the room felt like it would shatter at a touch. "Devon," he said gently, "I know this looks really—" "Looks?" Devon cut in. "Matt, you were our guy. We shared shifts, we cursed out Cole together, and we survived night shifts together. Now you're— Our boss? Are we supposed to call you Mr. Clark now, or what?" The room fell utterly silent. Everyone was waiting to see what he would say. Matthew exhaled and loosened his tie. Just a small gesture, but one that carried weight. "Just call me Matt, like you always have. I'm still the same person, you know. The only difference is that now I have a chance to change a few things around here." "What kind of change?" A woman's voice came from the back. Chloe, the morning shift worker, a single mom with 2 kids, stepped forward. "We've been promised change before. Things only got worse." Matthew nodded, not dodging the point. "I know, and I'm not going to stand here and promise perfection. But I can promise you this. I'll listen. If anyone has ideas, I want to hear them. If anyone has a problem, we'll try to solve it together." Devon still looked at him with deep skepticism. "And what if we don't trust you?" "Then you wait and see," Matthew replied frankly. "Give me 1 week. If after a week I'm acting like Cole, you can say it to my face. I won't fire anyone just for telling me the truth." It was a gamble, a big promise. But it was the only one he could make. Chloe stared at him, then finally nodded slowly. 1 week. 1 week, Matthew echoed. Just as the tension in the room began to ease, the sound of an engine made everyone turn. A silver Mercedes-Benz shot into the lot and braked hard. The door flew open. Darren Cole stepped out, face flushed red, eyes blazing with rage. He stormed into the store like a tornado, scanning the gas station with disbelief. "What the hell is going on here?" Matthew turned, calmly facing the man who had humiliated and fired him just 2 nights earlier. "Mr. Cole." "Don't! Mr. Cole's me!" Cole roared, jabbing a finger toward his face. "This morning, I got a call saying I was fired. Fired! And when I called back, they said this station now belongs to Hartman Energy, and there's a new manager." His gaze swept Matthew from head to toe with open contempt. "It's you." "That's right," Matthew replied, his voice steady. "It's me." Cole let out a bitter laugh, looking around the room. "Is this some kind of joke? A cashier promoted because what? He knew how to play the pitiful victim to the right person at the right time?" Devon stepped forward, voice sharp. "Hey, you're way out of—" Matthew held up a hand, signaling him to step back. "I've got this." Cole turned back to him, lips curling into a cruel smile. "Who do you think you are? You don't know a damn thing about running a business. You're just a pump boy with a soft heart who thinks giving away gas." "You were wrong." Matthew's voice cut in. Not loud, but sharp and clear enough for everyone to hear. Cole fell silent, eyes narrowing. "You were wrong about me. You were wrong about this job. And most importantly, you were wrong about what really makes a business succeed." "Oh, please." "Enlighten me, expert," Cole sneered. "The employee's a CEO now, huh?" Matthew walked toward him, each step slow and steady, until only a few feet separated them. No one in the room dared breathe too loudly. "You've got an MBA from some prestigious school," Matthew said, voice low but weighty. "You know everything about management, profit, and efficiency. But you forgot the most important thing." "And what's that?" Cole spat. "People." Each word landed like a hammer. "People don't just come here to buy gas," Matthew continued, his voice growing steadier. "They come after exhausting shifts on construction sites. They rush here on their way to the hospital. They're trying to get their kids home safe." Cole scoffed. "And you think coddling their feelings is going to increase revenue?" "I think if you treat them like human beings—" "They'll remember," Matthew replied. "They'll come back. They'll bring others. They'll trust this place. And that," he emphasized, "is how you build loyalty." Cole's face turned a deeper shade of red. "You're a naive fool with your head in the clouds. The real world doesn't work like that." Matthew still didn't flinch. "Then maybe that's why you don't work here anymore." The air in the room went still. Then a single clap rang out. Then another. Chloe was the first to clap. Devon followed. Then, one by one, the entire shift, and even some customers, joined in. The color drained from Cole's face, shifting from red to pale. He looked around, realizing he was completely alone. No allies, no authority, nothing left. "You'll regret this," he hissed through clenched teeth, spinning toward the door. "Mr. Cole," Matthew called out. He stopped and glanced back. "Don't come back here again." Cole glared at him, jaw tight, then stormed out. The glass door slammed behind him. The sound of the Mercedes engine faded away, and at that exact moment, the room erupted into cheers. Devon stepped forward and held out his hand. "All right, you've convinced me now." Matthew shook his hand, a faint, relieved smile appearing on his face. 1 week, remember? "Pretty sure we won't need that long," Devon grinned. In the weeks that followed, Matthew all but immersed himself in learning every detail of operations from a manager's perspective. Finances, supply chains, corporate policies, he absorbed them all as a dry sponge dropped into water. But more important than the numbers, he focused on the people. He sat with each employee, listening to their frustrations, ideas, and worries. He met the regular customers again, those who saw Rocky Mountain not just as a gas station, but as a stopping point where someone knew their name, where they felt like they belonged. One evening, sitting alone in the small room, the office that once belonged to Cole and now belonged to him, Matthew stared at the blank sheet of paper on the desk. How could he turn this place into something more than a gas station? He thought of Madeline Hartman, desperate, exhausted, with nowhere else to rely on. He thought of himself, just weeks earlier, sitting on the floor of his apartment, unsure how he'd pay rent. He thought of Mrs. Keaton, the woman who quietly gave and never asked for anything in return. And he recalled what his mother used to say, "Help others when you can, Matthew, because someday you'll be the one who needs help." He picked up a pen and began to write. Pay it forward. Program First Draft Core Principles. Customers who are able can leave a little extra money in a designated fund. Those short on cash, cases verified by staff as real, not scams, can withdraw exactly what they need to get home. No questions, no shame, just help offered freely. Rules: employees will be trained to recognize people who truly need help, parents with small children, elderly customers, emergencies. A $30 limit per assistance. Every withdrawal must be recorded clearly to ensure transparency. Customers who receive help are encouraged to give back when they are able. Matthew stared at the draft in front of him. It was simple, maybe too simple, but that was exactly what made it beautiful. The next morning, he gathered the whole team. "All right, everyone," Matthew began, standing before the morning shift staff. "I want to introduce something new." He held up a small sign, simple but elegant. Pay it forward program. Give when you can. Receive when you need. Chloe frowned. What does that mean exactly? Matthew explained the concept, how the fund worked, the principles, the rules. At first, skepticism filled the room. "People are gonna abuse it," one employee muttered. "How do we know who really needs help?" another asked. Matthew nodded. "Those are valid concerns. And yes, a few people will try to take advantage. But I'd rather trust 10 people and have one exploit it than live in constant suspicion and miss the chance to help 9 people who truly need it." Chloe looked at him for a long moment, then slowly nodded. "I'm in." Devon shrugged. "If it doesn't work, we can always take the sign down." "Exactly," Matthew agreed. "This is a trial. We'll learn as we go." The sign was hung right near the cashier's counter. In the first few days, most customers simply glanced at it and kept walking. A few stopped to ask, nodded, and moved on. Then on the third day, everything changed. A truck driver named Frank, a regular for over 5 years, walked up to the counter after filling up. He pulled out his wallet, hesitated for a moment. "This pay it forward thing." He tapped his finger on the counter. "It's real?" Matthew nodded. "Completely real. Not a marketing gimmick." Frank was quiet for several seconds, then pulled out a $50 bill. "Put this in the fund." Devon, who was at the register, looked up. "You sure? That's a lot." Frank stared out at the parking lot, eyes distant. "Last year, I got into an accident, stranded in Tennessee with not a single dollar to get home. A stranger helped me, gave me enough gas money to drive straight back to Colorado. No name, no demand to pay it back." He turned back, his eyes glistening. "Now it's my turn." Devon took the bill and placed it into the clear plastic donation box behind the counter. "Thank you, Frank." Frank nodded and walked away. But before reaching the door, he paused. "Hey, Matt." "Yeah?" "Thanks for thinking of this." The next day, a nurse named Sarah Nunguyan rushed in during her short break. She was in the middle of a 12-hour shift, exhausted to the bone, and her car was running on fumes. When she opened her wallet, her face went pale. "Oh no, I've only got $7. I need at least 15 to get home." Devon, remembering the training, looked at her closely. "You work at Memorial Hospital, right?" Sarah blinked. Yes. How did you know? I recognized the uniform. He opened the pay-it-forward box. Don't worry. We'll cover the rest. Sarah stared at him in disbelief, watching every movement as Devon calculated the difference and withdrew exactly that amount from the fund. I can't take this, she murmured. You're not taking it from me, Devon said with a small smile. You're receiving it from someone who wanted to help and didn't leave their name. The only thing we ask is that when you can, you help someone else in return. Sarah's eyes shimmered with tears. I promise. 3 months later, Sarah returned. She walked up to the counter, took out her wallet, and placed a stack of cash on it. $200 in total. Devon looked up, genuinely stunned. Sarah? I just got promoted to head nurse, she said, her smile radiant, and the first thing I wanted to do was give back. This is my thank you. Devon held the stack of bills, his throat tightening. We're really proud of you. And I owe part of this to you, Sarah replied. That night, I thought I was invisible, that no one really cared. But you all proved the opposite. 6 months after the Pay It Forward program was implemented at Rocky Mountain, Matthew received an unexpected call from Richard Hartman. My office, 2 p.m. We have something important to discuss. Matthew stepped into the large conference room on the 40th floor, where Richard and Madeline were already waiting. But this time, there were also 3 other men, each in expensive suits, each with a face as cold as steel. Richard gestured for him to sit. Matthew, this is the senior leadership team of Hartman Energy. They want to hear your explanation of the Pay It Forward program directly. A silver-haired man, George Patterson, the CFO, spoke first, his voice cold as ice. Mr. Clark, we've reviewed the financial reports from Rocky Mountain. Sales are up 23%. I admit that's impressive, but... He paused. We're concerned about risk. Matthew leaned forward. What risk, sir? Reputation risk, a woman interjected. Linda Cho, the marketing director. What if we expand the program and it fails? What if people exploit it? We'll look like naive idiots. Or worse, Patterson added, we create a culture of dependency. People will get used to being given things for free. Matthew felt heat rising in his chest, but he kept his voice calm. With all due respect, I think you're looking at the wrong problem. The room fell silent. This program isn't about giving things away, Matthew said clearly. It's an invitation to build community. In the past 6 months, we've helped 347 people. Guess how many came back to exploit the system? He paused. None. Not a single person. Patterson frowned. Impossible. But it's true, Madeline said, opening her laptop. We've tracked every transaction. In fact, 78% of the people who received help came back, not to ask for more, but to contribute. She turned the screen toward the board. A spreadsheet full of numbers, notes, and timestamps filled the display. Matthew continued. Frank, the truck driver, was helped in Tennessee when he got stranded. He left $50 in our fund. Sarah Nguyen, the nurse, was short $8. 3 months later, she came back with $200 after getting promoted. He looked straight at Patterson. This isn't a risk. It's an investment in people, and it's paying off. Linda leaned forward. But what if we scale to 50 stations? 100? How do we guarantee quality? With proper training, Matthew answered immediately. Employees must learn to recognize real needs. They must be empowered to make decisions. Most importantly, they must understand this isn't charity. It's treating customers like human beings. Richard, who had been silent until now, finally spoke. George, Linda, I understand your concerns, but look at the facts. Rocky Mountain used to be our weakest station. Now it's ranked 3rd in the entire state. He walked to the window, looking down at Denver sprawling below. We can keep the old business model, competing on price, cutting costs, treating customers like numbers. He turned back, eyes sharp as a blade. Or we can do something meaningful. He placed both hands on the table. I choose meaningful. 3 months later, at a regional managers training session, Matthew stood before 25 managers from Colorado, Utah, and Wyoming. Their expressions ranged from curious to skeptical to downright annoyed. I know many of you think this is some cheap PR stunt, Matthew began without hesitation. You think I'm trying to turn a gas station into a charity? A few people nodded. But no, I'm here to show you how to make more money. The entire room snapped to attention. 6 months ago, I was just a cashier. I got fired for helping a mother get home safely. Today, I'm standing here because the program I created increased revenue by 31% in 1 quarter. He paused, letting the number sink in. Want to know the secret? Matthew asked. It's not giving things away, it's building loyalty. When you treat someone like a human being, not a transaction, they remember. They come back, and they tell dozens of others. A manager in the back raised his hand. What if someone takes advantage? So what? Matthew shrugged. In 6 months, we had 2 cases, 2 people out of 347. I can live with that ratio. But, listen, Matthew cut in, not harsh but firm. We can spend all day worrying about the 2% bad actors, or we can focus on the 98% good people. I know what I choose. After the training session, a young woman, Jessica, a manager from Fort Collins, approached Matthew. Mr. Clark, that story you told about being fired, that happened to me once, 2 years ago, at a different company. I helped a woman who couldn't afford milk for her child. They fired me immediately. Her eyes shimmered. I thought I did the wrong thing. But hearing you today, thank you for showing me that kindness isn't a weakness. Matthew placed a hand on her shoulder. It never was, Jessica. It's always been the greatest strength. The Pay It Forward program had now been launched at 47 Hartman stations across 4 states. The numbers didn't lie. $1,200,000 donated by customers. 8,347 people helped. Average station revenue up 28%. Employee retention rates up 67%. But what Matthew remembered most wasn't the numbers. It was an email he received on a Friday night. Dear Mr. Clark, my name is Sarah Nguyen. You may not remember me, but 6 months ago, I was the nurse who was short $8 to get home. Today, I was appointed Director of Nursing at Memorial Hospital. And the first thing I did was convince leadership to launch our own program, Medical Pay It Forward. We help patients who cannot afford medication, checkups, or medical expenses. In the first month, we have already helped 43 families. You showed me that kindness creates ripples, and now, those ripples are saving lives. Thank you for starting it all. Sarah Nguyen, RN, BSN. Matthew read the email 3 times. Each time, his throat tightened even more. This was the reason. Not the revenue. Not the awards. But a nurse in Denver, now helping others the way she once was helped. The circle of kindness was continuing. 5 years passed like a dream. Matthew Clark, now 33, stood in front of the Rocky Mountain gas station, the place where everything had begun to change his life. He no longer worked here. Now he was the Regional Operations Director, overseeing 89 gas stations across 6 states. But this autumn afternoon, in the soft golden sunlight, he returned. Beside him was Ella, 11 years old now, taller, sharper, carrying the confident smile of a child raised in love. "Daddy, you used to work here?" she asked, looking up at the gleaming Hartman gas station sign. "That's right, Princess," Matthew smiled. "I used to pump gas, clean windows, and work night shifts for 3 years right here." "And you got fired? Just for helping someone?" Matthew nodded. Ella was quiet for a few seconds, then squeezed her father's hand. "I'm proud of you." Just that. Simple. Small. but enough to make everything he had ever gone through feel absolutely worth it. They walked inside. Devon, his old friend, now the station manager, was behind the counter. The moment he saw Matthew, his face lit up. "Matt, it's been forever!" The two hugged, not the polite kind between a boss and an employee, but the hug of people who had survived hard times together. "The station looks amazing, Devon," Matthew said, glancing around. The glass sparkled, the shelves were tidy, and everything felt clean and warm. And right in the center of the counter, the Pay It Forward sign was still there, slightly faded, but familiar and deeply meaningful. "How's the fund doing?" Matthew asked. Devon grinned with pride. $427 this week. Yesterday, a trucker left $100, said he got helped in Wyoming last year and wanted to repay it. Matthew nodded, warmth blooming in his chest. The cycle was still alive. "Daddy, look!" Ella pointed toward the counter. Under a small glass frame was a black-and-white photo. Matthew, from 5 years ago, wearing his uniform, standing in front of this very station, younger and much thinner. Below it was a caption, "Where it all began," where one small act of kindness changed everything. Matthew swallowed, steadying his voice. "Devon, you didn't have to." "I wanted to," Devon cut in. "Every new employee hears this story, about what you did and why this program exists." He looked straight at Matthew. "You taught us that kindness isn't weakness. It's the greatest strength people have." Matthew and Ella sat in the car, neither of them starting the engine. Ella looked at him, her face unusually serious. "Daddy, can I ask something?" "Of course, Princess." "If that day you hadn't helped Ms. Madeline, what would have happened?" Matthew leaned back against the seat, thinking for a moment. "Maybe I'd still be unemployed, still scrambling to pay off debt, still worrying about how to take care of you." Ella stared straight into his eyes. "But you still would have helped her, right? Even if you knew you'd get fired?" Matthew smiled softly. This child understood far more than her age. "Yes," he said quietly, "I still would. Because some things matter more than a job. When you see someone who truly needs help, and you have the ability to help, you do it, no matter the cost." Ella nodded, then opened her backpack. She took out a small envelope. "This is my savings, $47. I want to put it in the fund." Matthew's heart tightened, then burst wide open with pride. "Are you sure? You've been saving to buy a bike." Ella shook her head, firm. "The bike can wait. But someone out there might not be able to." Matthew pulled his daughter into his arms. He would never understand how he ended up with such a remarkable child. "Grandma would be so proud of you," he whispered. Suddenly, an old car rolled into the parking lot. A young woman stepped out, her face tired, anxious. In the back seat, a child slept curled up in a thin blanket. She hurried inside, straight to the counter where Devon was standing. "Excuse me. I need to get to Colorado Springs, but I only have $12. Enough for—" Devon smiled. Not the polite kind, but the smile of someone who understood exactly what she was going through. "It's okay," he said gently, opening the Pay It Forward box. "We'll help you. How much do you need?" Her voice trembled. $25. That would get me home." "Then get home safely," Devon said. "Just remember, when you can help someone else." The woman nodded, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I will. I promise." One small act of kindness can save a life, and that life will save another. That cycle will never end. Today, if you can, be the one who starts the cycle. Join us in spreading meaningful stories by hitting like and subscribe. And don't forget to turn on notifications so your day begins with a story filled with kindness and compassion.